On the cold fall night of September 5th, 1988, at around 3 in the morning, the early morning hours in Washington, Indiana, were interrupted by a house set ablaze on Oak Grove Road, on the west side of town near Oak Grove Cemetery. The house that was on fire was rented by 22-year-old Stephen Hendricks. Stephen was a quiet young man who worked at a local body shop and kept to himself. Approximately 2 weeks prior to the fire, Stephen had just moved his girlfriend, Rebecca Harvey, who was 18 at the time, into the home. Upon responding to the fire, authorities found that the house was burning at such a high temperature that it caused the paint on the vehicles in the driveway to crackle and pop. The vehicles in the driveway at the time of the fire belonged to Stephen. The presence of the vehicles and the lack of anyone outside of the home led authorities to begin looking for people inside of the burning house. Once the fire was put out, a single set of female remains were found inside the home. The remains that were found on the bed in the bedroom of the home belonged to Stephen's 18-year-old girlfriend, Rebecca Harvey. Upon further examination, it was determined that she had been doused with gasoline and tied to the bed prior to being set on fire. Investigators were able to determine that the fire was arson and was started under the bed where Rebecca's remains were bound. Stephen could not be found amongst the rubble of the fire. Meanwhile, all of his personal belongings were found inside the home, and all of his vehicles were still present. He never showed up to collect his last check from the body shop where he worked. Police originally thought Stephen had killed Rebecca, but now believe Stephen is a victim of foul play as well. The police have kept the reasons why they believe he was a victim quiet, withholding information from the public, but he is still missing to this day. The more puzzling piece of this case is the lack of articles, news coverage, or family interviews. There are only 2 very brief statements from the entire case, both about Stephen Hendricks. One of the statements was given by Hendricks' boss. All he said was that Stephen was a hard worker and never caused any problems. Stephen's cousin, years later, gave the only other statement, begging for anyone with any information to come forward so that the family could finally know what had happened to him. None of Rebecca's family gave statements that appeared in newspapers in the time or even years later. No relatives ever came forward or made any statements at all, no pleas to find her killer. There has been heavy police activity at Oak Grove Cemetery in Washington, Indiana in August of 2019, nearly 30 years later. It is rumored that police have dug up a grave there. The entire cemetery is blocked off with crime scene tape. Word on the street is that there are heavy police activities related to this cold case. Have they finally found the body of Stephen Hendricks almost 30 years later? And if so, who killed him? Is this murderer still hiding in the shadows of the small sleeping town of Washington, Indiana today? Anyone with information is asked to contact the Indiana State Police Department.